Hi, guys. As I promised, we're going to get more and more content out there every day. And so today I just kind of wanted to do a little Bible study or devotion with you. If you will, subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit that bell, or like the video. You can even leave a comment because the more people that subscribe, the more people that comment, the more people that share this on Facebook, the more people we're going to reach. And right now, we can't be out in public, so this is the next best thing. So, like, subscribe, share, all those things so that the message can get out. So, this afternoon, today, I want to uh, read from the book of Second Corinthians. I'm going to be in Second Corinthians 11 and then move on to 12. If you have a Bible, you can turn there, but I am going to be reading all the passages. I kind of want to set the stage for what was going on in Corinth at the time because Paul was writing this letter to the church in Corinth. Corinth was an administrative center of the senatorial province of Achaia on behalf of Rome. Years before Christ walked the earth, I think like 150 years, Corinth actually led a resistance against Rome, and we all know how powerful Rome was at the time. Rome pretty much sacked the city and destroyed a whole bunch of stuff. But around the time that Christ did walk the earth, Rome had gone in and they had put in a new infrastructure and put in their leaders and their form of government, and the city actually came back really strong. I think there were about 80,000 people that lived in Corinth at the time that Paul was writing these letters. And if you count the cities that were around, not really the cities, but the little towns and villages, and I guess we would call them the suburbs, if you counted those, that number would go up to about 100,000. So it was a pretty substantial city in the area. And like I said, they had the Roman infrastructure, they had the Roman government. They were pretty powerful. It was a big port city as well. So here's the thing: they were used to, as people, relying on themselves and their government and their city and all of that. And once you get used to relying on yourself and your own means, you don't leave a lot of room for relying on God and His means. You see, God shows up in the margins of weakness. You see, where we have strength, we don't leave a lot of room for God. It's a big deal. Paul saw that for the people in Corinth, but that's also a big deal, I would say, for the people of the United States. I mean, just take a look at the United States. We have been booming the last couple of years. Our economy has skyrocketed. The stock market was, closing at had record highs and stuff like that. The unemployment rate was crazy low. People were going to work. People were providing great living for their families. It was a good thing, and it's a great thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a danger when it comes to having so much strength and relying so much on self. The danger is when you have that much strength, you don't leave a lot of room for God. Just take a look at the people of Babel. In Genesis chapter 11, it's a famous story. The people, they looked around at their strength, they looked around at their numbers, and they looked around at how powerful they were, and they said to each other in verse 3, of Genesis 11, they said, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used bricks instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves." And that's the danger. They didn't leave a lot of room for God. They said, well, we can go up and be as high as God. We can put ourselves on the same level as God. And that's a dangerous place. When you equate yourself with your creator, you are a created thing and you think you're on the same level as the creator. That's a dangerous, dangerous game. Well, that's the game they were playing in Babel. And we all know what happened there. God scattered them to the corners of the earth, and they didn't speak the same language anymore, and they were just, it was not a good thing. So let's get back to Corinth. They were a powerful city. They had a lot going on, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of things, and and they were used to being self-reliant and self-sufficient. So you can see the danger in that. I firmly believe that since what has gone on in the United States and around the world, that we could be on the brink of something amazing, because there is weakness throughout the world because of what's happened with this virus. And I think that this could be the catalyst for a great revival. And maybe that's what Paul was thinking about, because he was getting ready to come back to Corinth. That's why I wrote the letter. So he says in chapter 11, he's kind of giving them his resume as to why he has the authority to say these things, why God chose him to do these things. I want to read in 2 Corinthians 11. I want to start in verse 21. And this is, like I said, this is kind of him giving his resume. He said, whatever anyone else dares to boast about, I'm speaking as a fool. He's kind of being, I guess if you could say, it's kind of being sarcastic, using a little sarcasm here. It's pretty funny. He said, also dare to boast about. Are they Hebrews? Well, guess what? So am I. Are they Israelites? Guess what? So am I. Are they servants of Christ? And this is in parentheses, but again, he says, I'm out of my mind to talk like this. Are they servants of Christ? I'm more. I've worked much harder. I've been in prison more frequently. I've been flogged more severely. I've beat and exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. I've been in danger from the rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from the Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, in danger from false believers. I've labored, I've toiled, and have often gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst, and often gone without food. I've been cold and naked. Beside everything else, I face the daily pressure of my concern for all the churches. Who is weak and I do not feel weak? Who is led into sin and I do not inwardly burn? If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. See, the God and the Father of the Lord Jesus, who is to be praised forever, knows that I'm not lying. In Damascus, the governor under King Aretas had the city of Damascus guard in order to arrest me. But I was lowered in a basket from a window in the wall and slipped through his hand. Like I said, his main goal for writing this letter was to prepare the church in Corinth for his 3rd trip there. He was getting ready to come back. And he wanted them to self-reflect. He wanted them to really not be embarrassed when he got there. He's like, I know what goes on in that city. I've been to that city. One of the big things that they worshipped in the city, not in the church, but in the city, was Aphrodite. And if you know anything about Aphrodite, you know that some not so good things went on in the worship of Aphrodite, and I'll just leave it at that. But he knew that that was the culture they were immersed in, and he knew that there was a probability that that could have crept into the church. In fact, Titus had been there, and he told him some of the things that happened. And so Paul's writing this letter, saying, look, I'm coming. I want you to get prepared because we're going to talk about some of this stuff. The reason he said this in chapter 11 was he wanted them to know that he knew what he was talking about. And it wasn't because of his authority. That's one thing he makes clear, that he's pretty plain, that this isn't about because of his authority, but because of the authority that God has granted them. He says, I know this and this and this because God brought me through that, and that. I know what it's like to be hungry, he said. I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to go through this, this, and this because God brought me through that, and that. The story doesn't end there. Chapter 12, it just gets going. I know that we all focus on, verse 7. We all focus on verse 7 where he talks about his thorn in the flesh. And people say, oh yeah, even Paul had a thorn in the flesh. But we're going to get to that. But I think too often we kind of pass over the first 2 verses. I love the first 2 verses. He says in 2 Corinthians 12, starting verse 1, I must go on boasting, although there's nothing to be gained. I could go on to visions and revelations from the Lord. No man in Christ who 14 years ago was called up to the third heaven, whether it was in his body or out of the body, I don't know. God knows. See, that was me. And I love how he just all nonchalantly say, "Yeah, 14 years ago, called up to the third heaven." It wasn't no big deal. Kind of mentions it fast and he keeps going. If it was me, I'd have led with that. I wouldn't have waited 14 years. I'd have led with that. Like, hey, look, I was called up to the third heaven, and you know what I saw? One thing I didn't see, I didn't see you guys there. Yeah, I've been broadcasting that live on Facebook. Look at all this that I've seen. I've been putting it on Instagram. Everybody would have known that I went to the third heaven. I guess that's the reason the Lord didn't call me to go there. See, if anyone can boast, it's Paul. If anyone can boast and say, just look at this, it's Paul. But skip down to verse 6 and look what he says. Even if I should choose to boast, I wouldn't be a fool, because I would be speaking the truth. But I refrain. I refrain so no one will think more of me than is warranted by what I do or say. And here's that famous verse 7. Or because of these surpassingly great revelations, therefore, in order to keep me from being conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Right there, in his weakness. It's kind of like what Forrest Gump said about his voyage with Lieutenant Dan when they had the big hurricane. He said, "It's funny Lieutenant Dan said that, because right about then, God shows up." Well, in Paul's weakness, God showed up. Verse 8 said, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." I honestly think that we are going to be pleasantly surprised at how God shows up in the coming days and weeks and months. You see, we as a nation, we as a society, we as a people, we are hurting right now. There's so much going on with not only the disease, but people aren't able to go into work. We don't know what's happening, what's going on, how fast is this going to spread, when are we going to get it under control? We just don't know. But what did he say? He said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness."